Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, coach, and mentor, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Hey, Jim, I'm good. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but we spent about 20 minutes visiting before recording
Uh,
today, and best 20 minutes of my day.
One of these days, we need to just light a big fire and talk until it goes out. You know what I mean? Or fish until all the worms are gone or something, because there's never enough time. We always say, okay, enough of that. We have to do something that's important. And this is important, and we're glad to be here today, but we do
Yeah.
enjoy hanging out. So give us
Mhm.
kind of the intro to our conversation today. What are we going to talk about?
Sure. I want to talk about this subject that is maybe something we've touched on in the past, perhaps. It's called becoming a leader of leaders.
Yeah.
Um, I've been in the Old Testament for, several months now. And a while back, I read Exodus 18 again. And in
Mhm.
Exodus 18, we read the story of Moses and Jethro,
Yeah.
his father-in-law.
Yeah.
And Moses and the Israelites were just getting started on their mission, really, to reach the promised land. And then in this chapter, we see something happening that's just fascinating to me, Jim.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things Moses did every day was hold court for the people.
Yeah.
Uh, and they would crowd around him from morning until evening so he could help them settle disputes. And
Wow.
I
He
can't
was a
imagine
senior
that.
pastor.
I can't imagine that being any fun. Um,
No. No.
and in an interesting verse in chapter 18, verse 17, his father-in-law says to him, "What you are doing is not good.
Not good.
You and these people will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone."
Yeah.
And I think, one of the best pieces of advice in the entire Bible,
Yeah.
and
Huge.
one of the best pieces of advice for anybody who wants to lead.
Yeah.
So what did he instruct Moses to do? Not directly, but indirectly, what he was telling Moses is you need to lead leaders
Yeah.
who can
Yes.
help you uh, stop being a one-man show,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
there's no longevity to that. There's no sustainability to that. And so, you know, it's this whole idea of unless I change how I lead, everybody's going to lose. And that's exactly what Jethro said.
Yeah.
Moses was a capable leader. God did amazing miracles through this guy,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
But this part of his leadership was flawed. And his
Mm.
father-in-law calls him out and says, "Hey, what are you doing? You're
Yeah.
setting yourself up for burnout, and the people who are around you aren't getting the proper attention they need anyway.
Yeah.
And so you're losing, they're losing." And you read stuff like that, and pastors get advice all the time, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it doesn't take a genius to point out a mistakes a leader
Yeah.
is making, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
doesn't require anything out of anybody, but it does take somebody special to kindly point out that mistake and maybe help collaborate on a solution, and then maybe even offer to help
Yeah.
implement the
Right.
solution. And Jethro was that guy, right? He was that special guy. So
Yeah.
what do you think about this whole idea before we jump into some real specifics here, Jim, about this leader
Oh,
of leaders? I know we've heard it
yeah.
before, and sometimes we hear it and we think, I'm tired of this leadership stuff. But
Yeah.
here it is. Here it is right here.
I'm tired of this leadership stuff. Let's sell ice cream because we're in the leadership stuff business, for the Lord. Yeah, I think that a lot of bad things are happening because of really good intentions of really hardworking Moses.
Mhm.
I'm doing the best I can. Well, it's not good enough. You're not developing leaders around you. You're not delegating. It's at all. What happens when you're gone? No, they're gonna look to you like you're God. And if you're not there, then they can't
Mhm.
find God.
Wow. I
There are
didn't think
so
about
many
that.
negative things that Jethro, I think, is pointing out, maybe just because You're ignoring my daughter. You're ignoring my grandchildren.
There you
You're
go.
never at home. When you get home, you're exhausted. You're burned out. I don't know how anybody
Mm,
could do that for very long without hating people, like just being disgusted. I'll say this: when I'm counseling people, and I know what the problem is in the first minute, I just want you to be quiet so I can tell you what to do, so you can ignore my advice and go back out and screw up your marriage some more. Then I know that I'm wrong. Like something is burned out in me when that's what I
yeah.
think marriage counseling is. You have to care about the issues. You have to have compassion, feel the pain, listen carefully, empathetically. There's no way you can do that. There's millions of people, so there's tens of millions of problems, and they're all waiting in line for days to get an audience with a guy who's burned out. And I can't think of a better kind of setup for a pastor of a church that has not begun to lead the leaders around him, because there are leaders around him. He's desperately, or she's desperately in need of rest. They're desperately in need of exercise. They're mistaking your voice for the voice of God. They're lining up outside your office. Man, if these things are happening, you are where Moses was. And now, John, your voice is the voice of Jethro saying, what? What's your next line?
Yeah.
Like, help us with this.
Well,
Because I think this is a chronic condition. I think, especially in a smaller
yeah,
church, this causes more burnout than most other things.
agreed. And Jethro really kind of laid out the framework for Moses. What a great father-in-law, right? He didn't just
Yeah.
say, son-in-law, stop doing
Yeah.
this. That's stupid. Stop it. He
Yeah.
went a little further, and he says, look, you need to hear from, I'll paraphrase what he said. You need to hear from the Lord,
Yeah.
and and bring some of these disputes to him,
Mm,
and you need to teach people the decrees and the laws, but that's not enough. He said, select capable men
yes.
who can have charge over thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens. It's a
Yeah.
little system that he designed
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And they can handle most of the cases.
Yeah.
Now, the ones they can't handle, yeah, they'll bring them to you and say, hey, this one's too big for us. We don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then Jethro says, that'll make your load lighter. And you'll be able to stand the strain, and the people will go home satisfied. I mean, what a brilliant
Right.
strategist here.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I love it. And I think he just outlines there's this pathway that I see in there in Jethro's solution that I'd like to
Yeah.
propose to our
Right on.
listeners and watchers
Bring it into
today.
the New
It's
Testament. Here we go. Acts chapter
yeah, here
29.
it's a it's really a three-part pathway to leading leaders. And I'll give you the top lines of them. It's scout,
Yeah.
develop, and release. And
Yeah.
then we'll talk about each one of these.
Yeah.
Scout, develop, and release. So scout. When I worked in the marketplace, Jim, we had this acronym. It was ABS, and
Okay.
it meant always be selling.
Yeah.
And I'd like to suggest an ABS acronym for pastors. It means always be scouting.
Yeah.
Becoming a leader of leaders starts with this awareness, Jim, that there is giftedness around me, whether I
Yes.
see it or not.
Yes.
It already is there and is just waiting for uh, to be mined
Yeah.
and invited into the effort
Yeah.
that you're putting forward in any given church that you might be leading. We've had a few pastors, and I'm being very facetious there. We've had hundreds of pastors tell us they just don't have enough people serving on their teams.
Yeah.
It's my contention that a full team starts with scouting.
Yeah.
Yeah, select some capable men, and they may not be full. They won't. They won't be. They won't be fully developed men
Yeah.
or women,
Yeah.
but there's capability there.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
there's giftedness.
Well, and the ones that aren't overly capable, make them leaders of 10 or leaders of 50 or leaders of 100, that
There
they're
you go.
the best should be leaders of 1,000 in whatever this analogy is to ours. So don't, being in charge of the greeters is different than being in charge of the altar team or being in charge of the small groups. There are places where people can receive meaningful delegated authority, that don't necessarily have to be brilliant
Mhm.
leaders, but heartfelt leaders, sincere leaders, kind leaders,
Right.
and we'll give the heavy things to those that can lift the heavy things, but we'll give something to everybody that has leadership in them. I think that activates the body of Christ. It's good for everybody, and I think your words are challenging us to think beyond. It's all my responsibility, and it
Yes.
just can't be.
And I would also say this, that even if you have a full team right now, that you should always be scouting.
Yes.
So we have 26 people on our Converge coaching team, Jim, right now.
Yeah.
But I am always looking for our next potential teammate.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
On my whiteboard, there's a list of half a dozen people that
Hmm.
I've built some relationship with. We know each other, and at the right time, an invitation is going to go to this group to
Yeah.
join the effort. And so,
Yep.
Pastor, we want to encourage you, if you don't have a full team, start asking God to bring into your line of sight
Yeah. Yeah.
the giftedness that might be right under your nose.
Yeah. Yep.
Let God show you, God, who am I missing here? Who,
Yeah.
who, we have all these needs, and um, yeah, who is around us that I'm not seeing what they could do, and
Yeah.
help me to see that. Be scouting, um,
Yeah.
and then invite that person to explore the opportunity with you, to explore how
Yeah.
God has put them together in terms of their passion, their pain,
Yeah.
their proficiency.
Yeah.
I hear some pastors, Jim, I've had pastors tell me straight up, um, I know they won't say yes. Can I just encourage you to reject
Hmm.
that line of thinking?
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
say no for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So scouting, always be scouting.
Can I
Here's
just say
like,
something to that
please go
statistically?
ahead.
So it was Barna or Lifeway, I forget which one, but they asked the question, "What's the number one need that you're dealing with today as pastors?" 76% put on that list, which is the most frequently mentioned thing on there, a need for leaders.
Mm,
So to say, yeah, if you say I just don't have enough leaders, congratulations, 3/4 of the pastors surveyed put that on their list as well. Only 25% say it didn't come to mind. So most of us are looking for more leaders. And I think you really nailed it on the head, John, when you said we're saying no for people. And sometimes we say that because like I don't enjoy marriage counseling. I'm not good at it. Local divorce lawyers send me their annual calendar to display in my office. That's how bad I am at marriage counseling, right? They're advertising for divorce. So I get that, but I don't enjoy it. I don't like it. And I had people come to me and say, we would like to counsel troubled marriages. And because of my response to troubled marriages, I assumed everybody, felt the same pressure or weight or disappointment. And,
right.
and it wasn't. It was their passion. They wanted to do this. Their marriage had been through everything that any marriage that was ever going to walk into the room would go through. They'd been through it and come out the other side. And they wanted to be the people they couldn't find when they were going through hard times for other people. And I said
Right.
no for about 6 months. Finally, there was a couple that I could not help. No one could help. It's terminal. And I just said, why don't you try to help this couple? Just because I knew they couldn't do any harm. And about 2 weeks later, they walked into the church holding hands. And I said, what happened? I said, we were at Dave and Valerie's house till 3 o'clock in the morning until we finally
Mm,
had a breakthrough. Well, I would never sit up with somebody for 6 hours, 7 hours. I would never have them in my home. It'd be an office, it'd be an hour. They leave having wasted hope on my counseling abilities. But Dave and Valerie adopted them and they helped so many couples. So I didn't ask for help because I figured other people didn't like the same things I didn't like or weren't good at the things
that's
I
a good
wasn't good at.
perspective.
So
Yeah.
instead of me saying, I don't take these burdens, they're too hard, if this is your passion, your pain, or your proficiency, you'll get a reward. You'll put a quarter into this and $1 will come back to you. You put $100 in, you get $1,000 back. And that's what they did. They took our divorce rate from 50% down to 1% of first time marriages and 3% for any couple that have been married more than once.
And
So
that's spectacular.
isn't that amazing? And we
That
still
is
have that
amazing.
that same rating today. They're both with the Lord now. This is years ago, but
Mhm.
they were passionate about something because I love them and they were my friends. I tried to keep them away from things I thought might be hard. And I'm telling you, the things you don't like to do, perhaps God has sent somebody who loves to do those things. So that
That's right.
invitation, don't say no for them. Give them opportunities.
Yeah, and to really drive this home, if you would have said no for them, you would have robbed them and those
And those
people
couples. Yeah. Yeah.
of an amazing, amazing expression of the grace of God.
Yeah.
So don't say no. Scout, be aware, pay
Yeah.
attention. There's talent around you that you
Yeah.
haven't uncovered yet. So be watchful. Second
Yeah.
piece of this pathway is to develop. It's one thing to assemble a team. It's quite another to develop that team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and here's what I mean by developing. I think we could talk for an hour about leadership development and all it involves. But here's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, Jim, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Um, to me, developing means we create the conditions for our team to grow their inner life
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
not just their walk with God, but their mind and their emotional well-being, their EQ, their
Yeah.
emotional intelligence.
Right.
A development to me includes helping them grow not just on the inside, but also in their leadership role. Giving them the opportunity to
Yeah.
develop the gift that God has put within them. Um, it has to do, I think development has to do with finding the right slots
Hmm.
for the people you assemble. And sometimes that's trial and error a little bit, right?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. For them and us. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and that's okay. And then I think the last piece when it comes to developing that really is on my mind, I think we develop our team when we provide clarity to
Hmm.
them around our vision,
Yep.
our values, our
Yep.
expectations,
Yeah.
the desired outcomes we have. We've talked about this and this one in the past, regular FaceTime
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
Those are some of the thoughts that come to me when I think of the develop piece of this pathway. What are your thoughts on that, Jim?
Yeah, I love that last part because unless we both agree what the rules of the game are and how we score points and how we defeat, our opponents, then we could be playing two completely separate games. And I've seen, I know you have two senior pastors waste a lot of emotional energy, upset that people aren't doing what they asked them to do when really technically they didn't ask them to do things specifically. So be the youth leader. Well, what does that mean? When do they
Right.
show up? What's the level of commitment? What's the win? Is it a large youth group? Is it a deep youth group? Is it engaging parents? So if a pastor has an expectation of what that job description is and doesn't give it to the person with the job, that happens, I would say, more often than not in small churches. You're an
Yeah.
associate pastor. Well, they don't know what that means. They're a
Yeah.
volunteer on the staff and they get the sniffles and they don't come to church for 3 weeks because you go, why aren't you more committed? Well, you gave me a
No.
title, but you didn't give me a description of what the title means to you.
Sure.
So I say if you're going to hire somebody or ask somebody to volunteer, it might be wise to write out a job description for that position and then offer those responsibilities that are clearly laid out with the goals, the organizational values, all those things you said, the expectations. And then we're setting people up to succeed. They're committing to the right thing and
That's
we're all
right.
speaking the same language. So I think that's
Yeah.
yeah. Otherwise, they get a lot of church hurt, right? Because the pastor asked me to be the youth leader, then he fired me 6 months later and told me that I had failed. Well, what is that?
Right.
What do you mean I failed? I was a youth pastor, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I think just to be real transparent here,
yeah,
that more often than not, when the people on our team aren't performing the way I want,
yeah,
I haven't done a really good job of being clear.
right, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's clear in my head,
yeah,
but
yeah,
if it's not clear in theirs, it's not clear.
yes,
And
yeah,
so this last piece is so crucial. And Jim, I've seen this in every size church, actually.
hmm,
Um, the lack of clarity.
yeah,
It's not specific to any size church. I mean, I've seen small, large, mega.
yeah, yep,
where this particular piece is not present,
Yeah.
and it creates a lot of turmoil
You
in
know,
the
my
organ,
my
a lot of frustration.
yeah. Well, my wife coined a phrase. I think she coined a phrase. Maybe she got it somewhere, but the whole staff knows it now, and that is clarity is kindness.
Mm,
To be unclear is to be unkind. To be clear is to be kind. She said, "Well, I don't want to ask for too much. I don't want like." We have to, I think, again, relieve ourselves from this thought that I'm unloading a burden on somebody. We're not. We're inviting them to their God-given,
yeah,
fruit. That we are God's workmanship. We're created in Christ Jesus to do good works that God prepared in advance for us to do. A wonderful place to encounter who you are, and then be released into environments that make sense is the local church. That's probably the clearest place to become to develop, to explore, to be safe, to become excellent at would be the local church. So to say, well, be the youth pastor again, or the children's pastor, or be a greeter without saying what that means. What time should they be there? What are your expectations? So clarity is not being a demanding, type A, D on the disc assessment, type one Enneagram. It's not. It's kindness. I'm telling you the rules by which we play and the score that we keep that decides whether we win or lose. And now we're both speaking the same language. So it's not, you're not asking, if I was going to play for the Yankees and they had a lot of things that I needed to know ahead of time, I'd say, well, they're the Yankees. Of course, there's a lot of things I need to know. If I'm going to play for the Tigers, then maybe not so much. I'm just glad to get a big paycheck and play baseball. But I would expect that organizations that have their act together have a lot of clarity.
yes,
And that's true of a baseball team. That's true of a corporation. So the question is it true of your leadership as a pastor? And if it's not, then that's not kind to the people that are serving in
right.
your organization.
And you can do something about it.
There you go.
You can actually do something about this one.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have a lot of control there.
Yeah.
So scout, develop. Here's the third one, Jim, and that
Yeah.
is to release. And this is
Yeah.
kind of like the anxiety producing part of
Yeah.
this
So I'm laughing like, yeah.
this process.
Uh,
You know, can I encourage you not to wait until conditions are perfect before you release your baby birds to fly out of the nest?
yeah.
Um, the people that you release will make mistakes, just like you did,
Yeah.
and you still do.
Yep.
They're going to have some growing pains, but really the release stage becomes the fun part of this process
Yeah.
at some point. When you see the work of your team exceeding what you could ever do by yourself,
Yes. Yeah.
and they are enjoying that work
Yeah.
and they're seeing fulfillment out of that work. I can't think of anything better. You and I were talking before we started recording about some of the wonderful things God's doing through you, and we'll talk a little bit at the end here about what you're up to with R to R and
Yeah.
the intersection of passion, pain, and proficiency. But to watch that really start to take off for you
Yeah. That's fun.
is a joyful moment for me,
Yeah.
because we've been dreaming about it for several years, and to see
Yeah.
it come to fruition, and we're very excited about what God's up to there. So um, releasing your team to step up and produce is
Yeah.
amazing. It's just a super rewarding
It is.
part of this process, but there's anxiety that comes with it as well.
Yeah. But again, it's tempered with the joy, the pride of those. I'm proud of the people. This just happened to me the other day. I had the Sunday off, but I was in town and I went to my church. I attended my church. If you've never attended your church, it's a wonderful thing, and I would recommend that you do it. And one of my associates was speaking. One of the campus pastors was at our campus and speaking, and it was baptismal Sunday on top of that. And I don't know, 25 people got baptized. I baptized maybe 3. You say, well, why you're the senior pastor? Why didn't you baptize more? Because I didn't lead them to Jesus. They're not in my small group. I'm not their pastor. They're life group leader. Sometimes their parent, sometimes their youth pastor, associate pastor. They baptize them because they led them to Jesus and they led them to this place in their faith walk. You say, well, that must be hard to watch other people baptize people. And it's just the opposite. That's like saying it must be hard to watch your grandkids play. It's not. It's fun to watch my children become parents. And it's fun to watch my spiritual children become parents.
That's good.
Dina said, are you okay? Was that hard? I said, it was actually, I remember watching her father watch all the grandkids play. We all went, this is how long ago it was. We went to go see Home Alone when it was a new movie. That's how long ago this was. And he had maybe a dozen grandkids all by himself. We all went out to go see the movie, came back. He was asleep in the chair. The house was trash. Nobody got killed. No one was missing. But the smile on his face when he woke up, being surrounded by his grandkids and all the chaos, it's there. There is a joy to delegation, and I think that's missed sometimes because what if I hand something off and they don't do an excellent job? Well, they won't at first, but like as you've already said, the first time we were given the ability or the opportunity to do something, it wasn't our best work, but people let us do it a second time and the third time. Proficiency grew because of a natural gift. So I would say that one of the greatest joys of ministry is delegation. If it wasn't, then why did Jesus do so much delegating? Why did Moses do so much delegating? Why did the disciples, the apostles, delegate so many things to so many people? It is, we are better when we all have a role. When we row the boat, we're a lot less likely to rock it. So I love that. You're right on, John.
So just a couple of closing thoughts here. You might be watching or listening to this and thinking, I don't have any leaders and I don't have any potential leaders. I mean, it's possible that's true. But I'm of the opinion that it's more possible. Yeah. You're not slowing down enough to see them. Can I encourage you, if you feel that way, to get on your knees and ask God to reveal who in your line of sight has potential.
Yeah.
Who he shows you may surprise you, by the way.
Yeah.
Jesus took a group of the least likely guys and turned them into world champions, just world changing guys. They were knuckleheads, in so many ways. Yeah. But he shaped and molded these guys into an amazing group. Moses, he followed Jethro's script and the results were impressive, right? I mean, it was a seismic shift in his leadership style.
Yes.
But it added another 40 years to his leadership life.
Yeah.
And so we want to encourage you to think about what we're talking about here today on the pod, about becoming this leader of leaders.
Yeah.
Jim, we've talked about recruiting to releasing, and this whole idea of releasing people into what God has designed them to do on planet Earth. And we have, as part of our effort to help, we've put together a wonderful cohort. And we'll be launching a new one when this comes out. Within a couple of weeks after this coming out, we'll be launching a brand new cohort. Why don't you take just 60 seconds and talk about the R2R cohort, and then I'll let people know where they can sign up for that.
Okay.
And then I'll have you wrap us up.
Yeah, starting at noon Eastern Standard Time, September 17th, which is a Tuesday, we're going to have 4 months of discussing the process, really flipping the standard script on its head. Instead of saying we need more workers, how do we have conversations with people where we discover the ministry that God has put in them and then releasing them? So we're not recruiting people to work in our nursery. We're discovering people that love babies, and then we're preparing them and then releasing them into environments that make the most sense. This is being used now all over the world, surprisingly enough. It's being used for evangelism, discipleship, and counseling. 3 basic questions. You probably heard us say it 3 times already. It's common language for you and I, but asking people, what's your passion, your God-given passion? What's your God-given pain? What's your God-given proficiency? Where those 3 answers overlap, a narrative can emerge that really begins to speak of a person's purpose. And I believe, again, back to Ephesians 2:10, where God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works that God prepared in advance for us to do, meets up with Ephesians 4:11 and 12, where God says, that's a big question, but don't worry. I've created apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to prepare God's people for works of service. So the same works of service in Ephesians 2, it's the same word ergon, the same works of service in Ephesians 4. And so we think that purpose is a missing element in the church. Again, 76% say, I can't find enough workers. Would you be surprised to find out that 57% of the people in America, whether monthly, weekly, or even daily, are saying, I don't have real purpose in my life? So when we can take the need of the church and the need of the congregation, the need of the pulpit, the need of the pew, and discover they marry so well that people will find purpose if they find their purpose. And you can help them discover their purpose and release them. And I know you said 60 seconds, so here's 10 more. If I ask somebody to help me somewhere, I need a mammal in a classroom with kids, please help me. If they do that, I owe them a favor. But if I'm the person that discovered that they belong in that classroom, I prepare them, I release them. In some ways, they kind of owe me a favor. I was the one that gave them a chance, maybe the first time in their life, to be who God made them to be. My whole life, every teaching environment I was in, people said, please sit down and please be quiet. What they didn't know is God created me to stand up and to speak. So the environment was against me. And finally, when the army gave me a chance, when the church gave me a chance, when a local congregation gave me the chance to stand up and speak, as it turns out, that's what I was created to do. So we want to help people discover that. And the joy of, again, being the grandfather, when you discover that youth pastor that does a great job. No, you're not the youth pastor, but you found a great one. And you're the grandfather of everything that his ministry will accomplish, grandmother. It's a wonderful way to live. We haven't hired a staff member off a resume in 17 years at our 5 campuses because we develop people from the inside out. And that's so good. That's more time than you gave me, but I can't help it. I just talk about it constantly. So 4 months in a small cohort of like-minded people discussing this and becoming very proficient at it, getting into the culture of your church. And what we're seeing is that the church really has changed when this is the culture.
That's right. And so go to convergecoach.com/cohorts.
Yeah.
And you'll see a list of cohorts that we offer, and you'll find the R2R recruiting to releasing cohort there. You can sign up and register. And we'd be excited to serve you in that capacity. So, Jim, why don't you go ahead and wrap us up, my friend?
So, guys, we say it all the time, but you're the reason we do this. If it wasn't for you, we'd still be talking about other things, because we're good friends. But we stop that because this is important. So we hope that you've got something deep, wonderful, precious, eternal out of this that's going to change your life and change the lives of those you serve. And we're on your side, man. If I don't know what to do next, that's great. Convergecoach.com. There's a contact us 30-minute conversation, no strings attached, free of charge. One of the 32, did you say, John? 36? 26. That's prophetically, but 32, and there's going to be 36. Somebody will get a hold of you, and we'll spend that half hour enjoying the conversation, seeing what we can do to help you. And if we can't help you, then man, we'll send you to somebody who can. If you don't need help and that's all you needed, then we're done. But if we can help you, understand that's one of the great joys of our life is to share the stories behind the scars and help you not to develop scars of your own. So God bless you. We're praying for you. If you're hearing this today, it drops. It's Tuesday and you haven't quit, man. So you're winners. Keep going as you continue to lead from alignment.